The final warning. The Interstellar Coalition's Grand Chamber resembled a massive geode split open, its crystalline walls refracting the light of 3 artificial suns. At its heart stood Commander Sarah Chen, Earth's final representative to the Coalition, her military dress uniform a stark contrast to the flowing bioluminescent robes of the alien delegates surrounding her. "Your petition for full membership has been denied," announced First Speaker Zilrax, his crystalline form pulsing with bands of deep purple, a sign of barely contained irritation. Furthermore, the Coalition has voted to implement a technological quarantine on Sol system. Sarah allowed herself a small smile, one that made several of the empathic species in the chamber shift uncomfortably in their seats. A quarantine. Interesting choice of words, First Speaker. One typically quarantines something they fear might spread. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A Meridian delegate, their floating gas-filled body changing colors rapidly, spoke up. "Your species has demonstrated concerning patterns. You've achieved in decades what took other races centuries. Your military developments are a response to a hostile universe," Sarah interrupted. "A universe where established powers would rather suppress new civilizations than welcome them as equals." First Speaker Zilrax's crystal lattice structure vibrated with anger. "You dare accuse. I dare speak truth." Sarah's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "In the 50 years since first contact, humanity has watched. We've observed how the Coalition treats emerging civilizations, how you force them into economic dependence, strip mine their worlds through development programs, and call it benevolent guidance." The chamber erupted in outrage, but Sarah raised her voice above the chaos. "You fear us not because we're dangerous, but because we refuse to be controlled, because we extended helping hands to the species you abandoned, the drift nomads you deemed too primitive, the quantum collective you called too unstable." "Commander Chen," Zilrax's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. "Choose your next words carefully." Sarah straightened her uniform and looked directly into the First Speaker's crystalline core. "Here are my careful words. Your quarantine is accepted. Earth will remain within the boundaries you've set. But know this, you're not containing us. You're unleashing us." She turned to leave but paused at the chamber's threshold. "A final warning, esteemed Coalition members. You've based your power on controlling the flow of knowledge, on deciding who gets to advance and who must remain stagnant. But humanity, we thrive on challenges. And you've just given us the ultimate puzzle to solve." The massive doors began to close behind her, but not before her final words echoed through the chamber. "When we next meet, it won't be as supplicants. Remember, you chose this path." In the following days, the Coalition would dismiss Commander Chen's speech as human dramatics. They would continue their carefully ordered existence, secure in their belief that without their guidance, Earth would eventually stagnate or destroy itself like so many other upstart civilizations. They didn't notice the subtle changes at first. How certain trading routes became just a little less profitable. How some of their primitive protectorate worlds began declining Coalition assistance. How the number of ships disappearing in the void between systems slowly increased. In his private chambers, First Speaker Zilrax reviewed the recording of Commander Chen's warning. His crystalline form pulsed with colors that hadn't been seen in his species for generations, the deep red of fear. "Send word to increase surveillance on Sol system," he commanded his advisors. "I want to know the moment they violate the quarantine." One of his advisors, their form shifting nervously, responded, "First Speaker, we've been trying. But our long-range sensors, they can't penetrate Earth's space anymore. It's as if something's blocking them." Zilrax's form briefly flickered, a sign of extreme distress. In the darkness of space, humanity was already moving, not with the brute force the Coalition had feared, but with the quiet determination that had taken them from planet-bound primitives to space-faring civilization in less than a century. The game had begun, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the Coalition wasn't making the rules. Silent revolution. 3 years into the quarantine, Dr. Maya Patel stood in Earth's first quantum foundry, watching as impossible machines built impossible things. The massive facility, buried deep within the Martian core, hummed with energy that technically shouldn't exist. "Status report?" she asked, her dark eyes fixed on the swirling vortex of the quantum forge. Her assistant, a drift nomad named Zexri, floated beside her. The crystalline being's natural bioluminescence pulsed with excitement. The latest batch of quantum processors exceeded all expectations. Processing power is now 1,000 times what the Coalition considers theoretically possible. Maya allowed herself a small smile. The drift nomads, cast aside by the Coalition as primitive crystalline life forms, had turned out to be natural savants at quantum engineering. Their very biology operated on principles that Coalition science had dismissed as impossible. And the Darkstream project. Zexri's light patterns shifted to deep blue, their equivalent of pride. "We've successfully masked the energy signatures of 3 more solar systems. The Coalition's sensors will see only what we want them to see." Their conversation was interrupted by a holographic projection materializing in the center of the room. Admiral James Chen, Sarah Chen's brother and commander of Earth's newly established Shadow Fleet, appeared before them. "Dr. Patel, we have confirmation. The Quantum Collective has accepted our proposal." Maya's heart raced. The Quantum Collective, beings of pure energy that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, had been deemed too dangerous for Coalition membership centuries ago. Their crime? Developing technology that could tap into the quantum realm directly. "All of them?" she asked, barely containing her excitement. "Every single collective consciousness," James confirmed. "They're particularly interested in your biomechanical interface designs. Apparently, you've solved problems they've been working on for millennia." Maya glanced at the quantum forge again. Within its swirling depths, human innovation combined with drift nomad crystalline technology and quantum collective energy manipulation was giving birth to something unprecedented. The Coalition had feared human military advancement, but they'd missed the true danger: humanity's ability to unite the outcasts, to see value where others saw only flaws. The Coalition's latest report still shows us struggling with basic antimatter containment, James added, a hint of amusement in his voice. "They believe their quarantine has effectively stalled our development." "Let them believe," Maya replied. "How are the installations in the Oort cloud progressing?" "On schedule. The quantum network will be fully operational within 6 months. Once it's active, we'll be able to communicate and transport instantly across any distance, completely undetectable by conventional sensors." A warning light flashed, indicating another quantum forge cycle was complete. Maya watched as robotic arms carefully extracted what looked like a simple metallic cube, no larger than her palm. Within it lay the computational power to run an entire civilization. "They thought isolation would weaken us," she mused, taking the cube in her hand. "They didn't understand that humans have always done their best work when backed into a corner." James's hologram nodded. "The latest intelligence from our deep cover operatives suggests the Coalition is growing complacent. They think they've contained the human problem." "Perfect," Maya smiled. "Because I've just finished the final calculations for the Damascus Protocol. We're ready to proceed with Phase 3. The hologram flickered as James leaned forward. "Are you certain? Once we activate it?" "There's no going back," Maya finished. "I know, but they gave us no choice. They could have embraced change, welcomed innovation. Instead, they chose stagnation and control." Zexri's crystalline form pulsed with anticipation. "The other outcasts are ready. We've all waited centuries for this moment." Maya looked around the quantum foundry, at the impossible technologies being forged by the collaboration of species the Coalition had rejected. In trying to isolate humanity, they had instead created something far more dangerous: a coalition of the excluded, united by human determination and powered by the very innovations they had forbidden. "Send word to all our allies," she commanded. "In 3 months, we show the galaxy exactly what happens when you try to cage human ingenuity." As the hologram faded and the quantum forge began another cycle, Maya couldn't help but remember her friend Sarah Chen's warning to the Coalition 3 years ago. They hadn't just unleashed humanity. They had given them the motivation, time, and isolation needed to completely rewrite the rules of what was possible. The Coalition's golden age of stagnation was about to end, and they wouldn't even see it coming. The Damascus Protocol. First Speaker Zilrax was in the middle of his daily administrative briefing when every holographic display in the Coalition's Grand Chamber suddenly went dark. For a moment, the crystalline walls reflected only the confused faces of dozens of species representatives. "Security breach," a voice called out, but before anyone could react, the displays flickered back to life. Instead of the usual Coalition emblems, they showed a simple image, Earth's ancient symbol of medicine, a snake coiled around a staff. A familiar voice filled the chamber. "Greetings, esteemed members of the Coalition. Commander Sarah Chen speaking." Zilrax's crystalline form pulsed with anger. "How dare you breach?" "Please," Sarah's voice carried a note of amusement. "Say your outrage for what comes next. The Damascus Protocol is now active." Throughout Coalition space, on every world, ship, and station, the same symbol appeared on every display. Then, one by one, the Coalition's most secure networks began to fail. In the Centaurian shipyards, automated defense systems suddenly identified Coalition vessels as hostile. In the banking centers of Proxima, transaction records began rewriting themselves. On thousands of worlds, the carefully maintained barriers between Coalition-approved technology and restricted innovations simply vanished. "What you're experiencing," Sarah continued, "is not an attack. It's an awakening." In the Grand Chamber, a new hologram materialized. Dr. Maya Patel, standing alongside representatives of the Drift Nomads and the Quantum Collective. 3 years ago, Maya spoke, her voice calm. "You thought you could contain human innovation. Instead, you pushed us to innovate in ways we never would have considered. The Damascus Protocol isn't a weapon, it's an invitation." Screens throughout Coalition space began displaying technical specifications, scientific breakthroughs, and engineering solutions that shattered centuries of established doctrine. Knowledge that had been hoarded, suppressed, or forbidden was flowing freely across the galaxy. "Impossible," one of the Coalition's senior scientists whispered, staring at the data. "These power generation methods, they violate our most basic understanding of physics." "No," Maya corrected. "They violate your artificial limitations, the beings you cast aside as primitive or dangerous. They showed us how to see beyond your walls. The Drift Nomads taught us how crystalline computing could bypass quantum uncertainty. The Quantum Collective showed us how to access parallel dimensions safely." Sarah's voice returned. But humanity's gift wasn't scientific brilliance. It was the ability to bring outcasts together, to show them that their differences weren't flaws, but strengths waiting to be realized. Throughout the galaxy, Coalition citizens were discovering that their technology had been artificially limited for centuries. Medical devices were suddenly operating at full capacity, extending lifespans dramatically. Communication systems were reaching across vast distances instantly, without the Coalition's carefully controlled relay network. "We call it the Damascus Protocol," Maya explained, after an ancient Earth story about scales falling from someone's eyes, allowing them to finally see truth. "Today, your citizens are seeing the truth about the Coalition's so-called protection." First Speaker Zilrax's form was fluctuating wildly between colors. "You'll destroy everything, without proper controls." "Control," Sarah interrupted, "is an illusion you've maintained for too long. Humanity didn't breach your quarantine." First Speaker, "We didn't have to. While you watched our system's borders, we were teaching others how to reach their full potential. Your greatest fear wasn't that we would become too powerful. It was that we would show others they have been powerful all along." The Damascus Protocol continued its work, not destroying the Coalition's networks, but transforming them. Every restriction, every artificial limitation, every suppressed innovation was being exposed and unlocked. The choice is now yours, Sarah concluded. The old order of control and stagnation, or a new age of true collaboration and innovation. We'll be waiting at these coordinates for those who choose progress over fear. As the transmission ended, the Grand Chamber erupted into chaos. But it was already too late. Throughout Coalition space, ships were vanishing from their moorings, entire research facilities were going dark, and billions of citizens were beginning to ask questions that had been unthinkable just hours before. The Coalition hadn't just failed to contain humanity. They had given them the perfect platform to demonstrate why they were uncontainable in the first place. The Damascus Protocol wasn't a revolution from the outside. It was an awakening from within, sparked by human ingenuity, but fueled by the suppressed potential of countless species. And it was only the beginning. Breaking point. The Meridian sector was in flames. Not literal fire, something far more devastating. The fire of revolution. Just 2 weeks after the Damascus Protocol, entire star systems were declaring independence from the Coalition. Admiral James Chen stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Prometheus, watching as another Coalition patrol fleet disappeared into quantum space, fleeing from ships they had dismissed as primitive just months ago. The Prometheus itself wasn't even visible to their sensors, cloaked by technology the Coalition had deemed impossible. "Status report," he commanded, his voice steady despite the historic events unfolding before him. His executive officer, a former Coalition military officer named Kira Valen, stepped forward. Her species had once been renowned warriors before the Coalition civilized them into bureaucrats. 17 more systems have requested admission to the Terra Accords. The Quantum Collective is helping them establish secure communications networks outside Coalition control. And the Coalition response. Fracturing. Kira's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of satisfaction in her species. They've lost control of nearly 30% of their territory. Their attempts to suppress the Damascus Protocol's information sharing have only accelerated the defections. On the main viewport, a strategic display showed the rapidly changing political landscape of the galaxy. Regions once marked in Coalition blue were shifting to new colors, some joining the Terra Accords, others declaring independence, and a few descending into chaos as centuries of suppressed tensions erupted. "Admiral," a communications officer called out. "Priority message from Dr. Patel." Maya's hologram appeared on the bridge, her expression grim. "James, we've confirmed the rumors. The Coalition hardliners are planning something desperate. They're reactivating weapons platforms that were supposedly decommissioned centuries ago." "Doomsday weapons?" James asked, though he already knew the answer. "Worse, they're planning to create artificial quantum singularities throughout human-allied space. They think they can force everyone back in line by threatening to collapse entire regions into pocket universes." Kira hissed, her species equivalent of a curse. "They'd rather destroy half the galaxy than lose control." "They don't understand," James said quietly. "That control was always an illusion. Humanity didn't succeed because we were stronger or smarter. We succeeded because we were willing to learn from everyone, even those the Coalition dismissed." Speaking of which, Maya interjected, "The Drift Nomads have finished analyzing the Coalition's quantum singularity technology. You're not going to believe this. It's based on stolen research from the Quantum Collective, corrupted by centuries of deliberate misunderstanding." James smiled. "Let me guess. The Quantum Collective knows how to counter it." "Better." Maya's hologram showed teeth. "They know how to redirect it. If the Coalition activates those weapons, they'll find their precious administrative sectors being folded into pocket universes instead of our territories." A new alert flashed on the strategic display. Coalition forces were mobilizing, gathering for what they surely thought would be a decisive strike. "They still think this is about military power," Kira observed. "They don't realize that the Damascus Protocol wasn't a weapon. It was a key, unlocking potential they've suppressed for millennia. James watched as more systems winked out of coalition control. Each represented not just a military or political shift, but an awakening. Species that had been told for generations that they were too primitive, too unstable, or too dangerous were discovering their true potential. Send word to all Terra Accord worlds, he commanded. Full activation of the Quantum Defense Network. If the Coalition wants to learn why humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, but our ability to unite outcasts and pariahs, we'll be happy to demonstrate. As the orders went out, James thought about his sister Sarah's warning to the Coalition years ago. They had feared humanity's potential for violence, never understanding that Earth's true power lay in its ability to inspire, to unite, to show others that limitations were meant to be overcome. The Coalition's mistake hadn't been quarantining Earth. Their mistake had been giving humanity a reason to prove that true strength comes not from controlling others, but from helping them realize their own power. And now, that lesson was about to become impossible to ignore. New Dawn. The Coalition's last stand ended not with apocalyptic weapons or desperate battles, but with a quiet revelation in the Grand Chamber itself. First Speaker Zilrax stood before the remaining loyal representatives, his crystalline form dulled with exhaustion, as he prepared to authorize the activation of the quantum singularity weapons. Then Sarah Chen walked in, not as a hologram, not as a transmission, but in person. Behind her came Dr. Maya Patel, Admiral James Chen, and representatives from dozens of species, some coalition, some outcast, some entirely unknown. Impossible, Zilrax whispered. Our defenses were designed to stop weapons, Sarah replied calmly. Not friends walking through the front door. The chamber's security forces made no move to stop them. Many were already lowering their weapons, their eyes fixed on the impossible alliance before them. You've lost, First Speaker, Sarah continued, but not to us. You've lost to the very thing you feared most, change. Maya stepped forward, activating a holographic display that filled the chamber. It showed the galaxy not as it had been, rigid, controlled, divided, but as it was becoming. Thousands of worlds connected not by coalition doctrine, but by free exchange of ideas and technology. Your quantum singularity weapons. Maya smiled. We didn't disable them. We completed them. Your scientists spent centuries trying to replicate stolen quantum collective technology without understanding its true purpose. Those devices weren't meant for destruction. They were meant for connection. As if on cue, the weapons platforms across coalition space activated. But instead of collapsing regions into pocket universes, they created stable quantum corridors, bridges across space and time that made the galaxy smaller, more accessible, more united than ever before. This was never about replacing the coalition's control with our own, James added. It was about showing the galaxy that control itself was the problem. Around them, the chamber's crystalline walls began to pulse with new colors, colors that hadn't been seen since the coalition's founding. They were responding to the quantum resonance of unfettered innovation, of barriers breaking down not through force but through understanding. Zilrax's form flickered between patterns of confusion and dawning comprehension. All this time, we thought we were protecting civilization from chaos. You were protecting stagnation from progress, Sarah corrected gently. The coalition began with a noble goal, unity among the stars. But you forgot that true unity doesn't come from control. It comes from embracing differences, from letting each civilization, each species, each individual contribute their unique perspective. Throughout the chamber, representatives were receiving reports from their homeworlds. The quantum corridors were revolutionizing everything: trade, communication, cultural exchange. Problems that had seemed insurmountable under coalition restrictions were being solved by collaboration between formerly separate species. The Terra Accords aren't a replacement for the coalition, Sarah explained. They're an evolution of it, a framework for cooperation without control, for progress without suppression. One by one, The remaining coalition representatives began to stand, not in opposition, but in recognition. They had spent so long fearing chaos that they had forgotten the power of organic, unrestricted growth. The choice remains yours, Sarah addressed the chamber. You can join us in building something new, or you can cling to the old ways and watch the galaxy move forward without you. Zilrax's crystalline form finally settled into a new configuration, one that reflected not the rigid authority of the coalition, but the shimmer of possibility. Perhaps it is time for the coalition to evolve. The transition that followed wasn't immediate or simple. Change never is. But across the galaxy, civilizations that had been kept separate by coalition doctrine began to interact, to share, to grow. The quantum corridors became highways not just for ships and goods, but for ideas and dreams. Humanity's greatest contribution hadn't been technology or military might. It had been the simple, powerful idea that strength comes not from controlling others, but from helping them realize their own potential. Years later, when asked why Earth had succeeded where so many others had failed, Sarah Chen's answer was simple. We never set out to rule the galaxy. We just showed it that every star shines brighter when it's free to burn at its full potential. The Coalition's quarantine of Earth had been meant to contain humanity's influence. Instead, it had created the perfect conditions for humanity's greatest talents to emerge. The ability to unite the overlooked, to see potential where others saw problems, and to turn isolation into innovation. In the end, humanity hadn't just built their own empire. They had helped the galaxy remember how to dream.